Hi, this is Jeremy Farber with Homestead, and you're listening to the Ascent with Crestmont Private Wealth.
The opinions expressed are those of the host. The material is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice, and it is not intended as an endorsement for any specific investment. Visit CrestmontPW.com for more details.
Welcome to the Ascent. This is Sam McGee with Crestmont Private Wealth, and we have offices in Houston, Texas, and Boerne, Texas. Today we've got a very special guest with us, Jeremy Farber, who is with Homestead, that I actually met at a pickleball tournament of all places through the chamber. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So, really good topic. Homestead, you can share a little bit about what you guys do and a little bit about your background and your expertise. Before we do that, I just kind of on a personal level, very recently, I had the opportunity to help out a family friend down in Houston with getting an old classic car online for sale and potentially like a lift, right? And unfortunately, this was for a lady that her husband had a stroke, and he was kind of a remarkable man that is now a changed man because of this stroke. And all of a sudden, she's just completely overwhelmed with all this stuff. And that's just kind of one of those situations you hear about all the time. And, this is a bit of a tough subject, but Jeremy, as we kind of think about that example, you're obviously passionate about what you do. Share a little bit about your why, what you do, and then we'll kind of come back to that example and kind of weave that in.
Sure. So why do I do what I do? And I can take you back a little bit. So just briefly, I tell people all the time I'm on my third career. I started as a college baseball coach. That was my first profession. And then we started a family. And for personal reasons, with my oldest child having a rare syndrome, which we didn't know about at the time, I had to spend a lot of time at home and try and help my wife. And so I got out of coaching because that's very time intensive. Got into pharmaceutical sales, did that for 14 years. And then during COVID, had an opportunity to transition and go into business for myself, and was looking for different business opportunities, and chose home care because the number one thing we wanted to do is serve people.
And to be clear, not taking care of the home,
right.
Taking care of people in the home.
So we say in-home care, which is providing care in a number of different ways. It could be primarily seniors, but it could also be, folks that have, like my daughter is a client. She's 22 years old and she can't be by herself. And so we have a caregiver that's with her when we need to be away that helps out. We focus on adults, so 18 and above. But there's a lot of service. So when we looked at in-home care, we wanted to serve people. Not only do we get to serve our clients in a great capacity, but we get to serve our employees. That's where we landed.
Interesting. So, a personal side to what led to your passion and your business. And, you mentioned your daughter and you work with clients that are 18 and up. How often do you see younger folks or middle-aged folks that need your type of service versus what we think, which I think is kind of, we think about nursing home? How often do you see that?
Well, it's very common. The example that you gave is a very common example. The ideal situation, which is where you come into play, right, with what you do, is helping people think about things in the future ahead of time before you actually need it.
Sure.
If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And so helping people understand that these are the things that you can prepare for is something that's really important. So your situation with somebody having a stroke, you don't plan for that, but you can plan for things. So when something happens, you know what you're going to do. You know what the next step is.
So at Crestmont Private Wealth, we spend a lot of time on helping people think through long-term care, both the financial aspect as well as forecasting the what-ifs from a financial perspective to make sure that they are either self-insuring that potential cost or that they can go insure it. And that's something that I think everyone should probably do because you don't realize how at risk you are for disability or needing long-term care. What are some things that people can do from a practical standpoint to maybe ease the transition for the unexpected? Just some tips you could think of that, I have an example. My dad told me that, hey, in his safe, they've got passwords, and then I obviously would have access to that in the event of something happening. But what are some other things that you've heard just kind of through working with clients on things you can do to prepare for the unexpected?
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't have enough time really to talk about all of it, but just a few things. What you just described is obvious. Making sure you have a conversation with somebody that understands where your passwords are, where the login information is. But also preparing by thinking about a long-term care policy, having conversations with attorneys, make sure you have a will in place, make sure people in your family or people that you're close to understand where those things are at. As we continue to age, just one example would be a DNR, do not resuscitate, having something like that in place, and family members that know power of attorney, medical power of attorney, legal power of attorney. Those types of things are important. And we typically think those are, hopefully they're way down the road. But again, just being prepared and thinking through some of those things is very important.
So in terms of what you guys do, and back to the home instead, the thought process behind that is, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but is for people to stay within their home and to get adequate or skilled healthcare or help to come in and help them live their life while maybe a caregiver is gone, or is it more of a permanent placement? How does that look?
It can start with just something as simple as companionship. So we go into the home because mom lives in Bernie. Dad passed away a couple years ago. She's starting to feel lonely. She's not going out as much. She's not as active, but her body's still in good shape. Her mind's still in good shape, but she's starting to experience loneliness. And so we step into that situation to make sure she stays active. When I simplify it, we want to try and help people stay as independent as possible for as long as possible. And that's what we help with. So we all have a certain level of both independence and dependence, depending on where we're at in the aging process. And so we want to make sure they stay as independent as long as possible.
So if you ever start a business for parents that want to get away for a weekend to come watch your teenagers, that's pretty risky.
It is risky. The liability there would be pretty high.
Yeah, I don't know if we could do that.
So I'll keep it in mind.
Okay, but I'm just putting in a plug right now.
That's a great thought.
Okay, good. So switching gears a little bit, I'm kind of looking at this Wall Street Journal here as we're sitting here. People think about, wealth management being markets and portfolios. And yes, that's a big part of it, but it is a lot of planning for the unforeseen in the future and the inevitable. So, we hear so many times that, men may die of a heart attack and go quickly. And then, women typically will live longer because they're not as, quite frankly, and may live longer and may experience more heightened risk of dementia and Alzheimer's and so forth. So what have you seen in your practice, just a good planning perspective for your aging parents? If you're maybe middle-aged and you have older parents and they're aging, what are some things you've seen that have been pretty successful?
I mean, the number one thing is having a conversation, and that's really challenging. That's a very difficult step. The number one thing, the place to start is having a conversation. That is so challenging, just to take the first step and begin the conversation of what if? What if something happens to mom? What if something happens to dad? What if there's an event of some type? Heaven forbid something catastrophic happen. So let's have the conversation. Let's start the conversation. Are there wills in place? Where are the wills located? Who has that? When you start to unroll and unpack these things, those are the things that need to be talked about. And the most successful clients that we have plans in place. Where we typically get people, and this is unfortunate, is post-fall, right? So there's a fall. They slip on, we have 2 days of snow or ice or whatever it may be here in South Texas, South Central Texas, and somebody has an accident, ends up in the hospital, and we're getting a call from a case manager in the hospital, right? Where there's nothing in place and you have this catastrophic event and it leads to them looking for care. Where we would hope, what we hope for is that somebody has a plan in place. And so when something happens, they know exactly what the steps are going to be that they're going to take. But it's not always possible, right? Yeah. But having the conversation and beginning the conversation of the what if is a really important start. Yeah, so about 70% of our clients pay privately. We also have long-term care policies. So what you talk about with long-term care, that actually pays for our services. And a lot of people don't know that. When people get a long-term care policy, what do they think of? Facility.
Yeah, they do.
Assisted living, nursing home. Those are the thoughts that people typically have. And a lot of times they've had this policy for decades, and then they're surprised to know that, oh, well, I can stay home and I can actually benefit from this insurance policy that we took out 40 years ago. That's very rewarding because they're not completely coming out of pocket for every bit of the care that they need or that they want.
Which is huge too, because they may choose for a more premium service than if they didn't have that psychological safety to go and get those services. Absolutely. By having that, policy. And we talked about this a little bit over at the pickleball tournament when we had that conversation, that a lot of the policies now are the indemnity policies, which basically if you can't function so many of the ADLs of the 5, the daily living activities, then you can qualify for receipt reimbursement using an indemnity policy. Not every policy is like that, but a lot of them are now. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think that's good to know because people want to be independent. They want to live their best life. They don't want to be, at a quote unquote facility. And maybe some people view that as a good thing, but I think a lot of people do want to live independently. So your business allows people to still live in their home.
That's it. Yeah, we age in place. Mom and dad moved to Bernie or the Hill Country for a reason, or maybe they grew up here, but we have so many people that move from Houston, Dallas, whatever. They want to get out of the city and get into the Hill Country, and they're alone. They don't have siblings, and so we allow them to age in place where they move to, where they want to stay.
Well, I feel like we just barely scratched the surface. We're going to need a part B of this. This went so fast, and it's such a deep topic. Again, I'm looking at this Wall Street Journal here, and maybe you're picking up the paper, you're checking scores on a Saturday, and you're caught up in the daily moment or the daily grind. Do yourself a favor and listen to what Jeremy said. Make a conversation with your loved ones that might be vulnerable. And, you're going to be one of those people later in life too. So make a plan. Do something for your family to make sure that you are prepared for that potential event of needing care, either in your home or otherwise. So if this show has been interesting to you and you don't have a plan in place, a financial plan, you can reach out to us at crestmontpw.com. There's a contact us page there, and we'll review your situation. Typically, we work with families with $1 million in liquidity and up and high earners. Jeremy, how would people find you if they wanted to learn more about Home Instead?
Sure. So homeinstead.com and /Bernie is one way. And also our phone number is 830-249-4988.
I hope this has resonated with many of our listeners, and we will do a part B because I think there's more to talk about here, Jeremy.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on the show and imparting your wisdom, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and God bless.